Hello and welcome, once again, to one of those videos where I check out a game that has been handed my way. Recently, retroware was gracious enough to provide me with a key for their latest release, Meet. And no, I'm not receiving any compensation for my thoughts on the game. In fact, apart from clicking a button to accept the key, I had no direct contact with them whatsoever. So why did I accept this one? Simple, it looked like a Contra game. If you've been around this channel long enough, you know that when I need a break from mech content, I tend to dive into something that scratches that Contra itch. It's a nice little formula that helps me keep things fresh, myself a little more sane, and Meet seemed like a perfect fit. Let me start by saying that Meet did not disappoint. It's a Contra clone in the best way possible, and I mean that with all the respect in the world. For fans of Contra, this is probably the game you've been waiting for, especially if Operation Galuga left you a little underwhelmed. It feels much more in line with Contra 3 The Alien Wars or Contra Hardcore, particularly in how it leans heavily into the body horror themes that made those games so memorable, at least to me. Except here, the developers dialed those themes up to 11. The grotesque visuals and terrifying enemy designs are front and center, giving the game a gritty, visceral edge that immediately caught my attention. One of the things I love about Meet is how solid the gameplay feels. There's a weight to it, a level of polish that makes each moment of gameplay incredibly satisfying. Again, because it's exactly like Contra. If you played Contra, then you know exactly what to expect. Frantic, side-scrolling action, precise platforming, and enemies that never give you a moment to breathe. The game sticks to that formula with almost religious devotion, and I mean that in the best possible way. Again, Meet is functionally identical to Contra, right down to the weapon types and how the pickups float onto the screen. It all feels eerily familiar, obviously in a good way. It's the type of game where you immediately feel at home if you're obviously a Contra fan. Please don't count how many times I've said Contra already. Now, there are reasons I haven't called Meet a ripoff. The word clone fits better, and not in a negative sense. While the game is clearly heavily inspired by Contra, it brings its own unique flavor to the table. For starters, while Contra games often take place in sci-fi or alien-infested environments, Meet wears its inspiration from Doom on its sleeve. The world feels ripped straight out of an industrial hellscape, complete with demonic forces that would make Doom's demons look like lightweights. It's a fascinating fusion of the fast-paced shoot-'em-up gameplay of Contra with the dark, oppressive atmosphere of Doom. And somehow it manages to make the experience even more violent than either of those games, which is a pretty bold statement when you consider how intense both Contra and Doom can get. That isn't to say that Meet is some overly grimdark experience though. In fact, it strikes a balance by throwing in a lot of fun, almost absurd designs that keep things fresh and unpredictable, especially when it comes to the boss encounters. The developers clearly had fun with the creative process, tossing in wild ideas like a mutated train or a grotesque semi-truck turned monster. It's the kind of over-the-top design that makes the game feel more like a dark comedy at times, which adds a unique layer to its otherwise intense atmosphere. The absurdity doesn't stop there either. As you progress, you can unlock a variety of bizarre, outlandishly designed characters to play as, further emphasizing the game's tongue-in-cheek approach to its horror elements. These moments of levity really help the game stand out, preventing it from becoming too heavy while still delivering the chaos and carnage players expect. Now, the story is minimal, but it works within the confines of the game. There is an invading demonic force, a cocky scientist is responsible, and you're basically tasked with mowing down hordes of enemies to stop the apocalypse. It's classic video game storytelling, a straightforward setup that doesn't get in the way of the gameplay. But what stood out to me is how the game makes an effort to create an active world around the player. As you make your way through the game's levels, you'll occasionally come across other forces fighting against the demonic horde. They're just background elements, but every now and then, they'll toss you a weapon or provide some form of assistance. It's a small touch, but it adds a surprising amount of depth to the world. It makes it feel like you're not the only one out there trying to save humanity, even though the game firmly positions you as a one-person army. That being said, while Meet absolutely nails the gameplay and atmosphere, there are a few areas where I think the game could have done a little more. For one, there's the issue of longevity. The game is short, really short. Now, I don't mind shorter games, especially when the content is as polished as it is here, but I do think a few additional features could have extended its lifespan. There is a 2-player mode in Meet, but for now it's limited to local play. While I'm usually not one to clamor for online features, with handheld PCs becoming more common in the gaming world, I think it would really benefit the developers to include a wireless multiplayer option. Basically, I think that Meet should have both local and online modes to fully tap into the modern gaming landscape. There's a decent selection of characters to unlock, which is fun, but getting through them all requires quite a bit of playtime. Ironically, for a game with meat in the title, there just isn't quite enough meat to the overall experience. Sure, replaying the game is enjoyable, but I would have liked to see more modes added to give the game a little bit more replay value. Time trials, more specific challenges, whether through achievements or a dedicated mode, maybe even a boss rush or a more traditional mode where lives carry across all stages would have been great. That last option in particular would raise the stakes, especially since the current setup gives you all your lives back after completing a stage. It's not a major issue, but it does make the game feel a little bit easier compared to its Contra roots. Overall, I'd say that Iron Meat is definitely on the right track, and it's totally worthwhile if you're in the mood for some skillful platformer shooting. There wasn't a single stage that I felt needed improvement, as they were all expertly designed. It's just that I wish there was more reason to play other than collecting points for other characters, or at the very least, more ways to actually collect points to earn these characters. Then again, Iron Meat is a young game, and who's to say what the future holds?